This is Scott Loveridge with the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development, and we're pleased to be hosting this takeout menu webinar featuring folks from Ohio State University talking about on-site renewable energy development as a business retention and expansion strategy. And today we have with us Eric Romich, Myra Moss, and Nancy Bowen, and I think Eric's going to start. So go ahead, Eric.
Thanks, Scott. And first of all, I guess thank you for joining us for today's takeout menu. My name is Eric Romich, Ohio State University Extension Field Specialist with a focus in energy development. Joined today by OSU Extension colleagues Nancy Bowen and Myra Moss, and we are going to discuss a program that's had a lot of success in Ohio. And we've kind of titled it On-Site Renewable Energy Development as a Business Retention and Expansion Strategy. So today's takeout menu's program objectives, we're first going to define distributed energy generation, analyze what is the connection between distributed energy generation, or DEG, and business retention expansion. And then we'll review some program materials that we've used here in Ohio and identify some lessons learned from our experiences, and then wrap up with some discussion and questions around how this could possibly be replicated in other states. So, to start off, what is distributed energy generation? And I think it's important to kind of analyze the history of the electric system here in the U.S., and that's evolved around more of a centralized model, which consists of roughly 5,400 large power generation plants in this country that generate hundreds and in some cases thousands of megawatts of electricity. And these plants are connected through a very complex network of more than 200,000 miles of high voltage transmission lines and 5.5 million miles of local distribution lines. So, this is the process referred to as more of a centralized structure that most of us receive our electricity from. Now, an alternative approach to generating electricity is what's referred to as distributed energy generation or distributed energy systems. Now, distributed energy systems are typically smaller in nature, more modular or decentralized systems that are located at or near the point of consumption where the electricity is to be used. So the image on this slide is an image of a rooftop solar system on a small community bank that has utilized, I guess, their empty roof space to generate a portion of that bank's electricity needs. So they are generating roughly 40% of their needs from that system. So another term that's frequently used with on-site electricity generation and distributed energy systems is net metering. And I think it's important to understand the difference between distributed energy and net metering. Essentially, net metering is a tool that's essentially been developed through policy to help promote the adoption of distributed energy generation systems. So net metering is in its simplest form a billing agreement or arrangement between electric consumers and their utility providers, to where they can receive a credit on their utility bill for any extra electricity that their system could produce. And so if a distributed energy system generates more electricity than what the demand is at that location, that extra electricity is going to flow back onto the utility's distribution system. So the excess generation will be offset by credits that go to that consumer that they can accumulate and then use at a later date when they may not be generating as much electricity as what they need. As you can see in the chart here, there's 43 states that currently have incorporated some type of a net metering program. Ohio happens to be one of 3 states that has essentially no capacity limit on the
Well, we've lost Eric. Eric has been downgraded to non-presenter status, so we'll try to get him back here. Okay, Eric 2 is now re-upgraded to presenter status. Hopefully that will allow him to get on. What we might do is, Myra or Nancy, maybe
Scott,
talk about
can you hear me?
Oh, you're back. Okay, go ahead.
Scott, can you hear me? All right. Well, I'm never going to be invited back for another takeout menu with this type of connection. But apologies there. Moving on, this chart is kind of illustrating the trend line for net metering. Nationwide, you can see as illustrated in the chart there, we've seen an increase since 2003 of 56% annually. And much of this is driven by technological advancements, the cost of these distributed systems coming down, and then also the policy drivers such as net metering. In Ohio, you can see we've also experienced a similar trend line. But when you really put it in perspective, in 2008 we really saw a spike, and that's when our net metering policy was revamped and we had our renewable energy portfolio standards established. But leading up to 2010, there's 757 net metered projects in Ohio, and it's really a small drop in the bucket in comparison to the more than 5.5 million electric retail consumers. So, what is the connection between on-site renewable energy development as a business retention and expansion strategy? And to illustrate this, I think we'll kind of lean on an example or a case study. Cooper Farms is a meat processing facility in Ohio that installed at first two 1.5 megawatt wind turbines to offset a portion of their electricity needs. That project worked so well that they actually came back and then installed a third turbine to offset now 80% of that facility's needs. So the idea is a project here that they made this investment into this community. That project's set to break even in the 5 to 6 year range. And the system's warranted for 30 years. So, the idea is, their electricity needs will essentially, those costs will be fixed for the first few years, and then, of course, everything after that's going to be, resources that can be reinvested into other portions of the business. So, those 400 jobs are ultimately going to be more secure. Now, can't tell, I was having some technical difficulties here. But the idea there was that initially Cooper Farms looked at that system through an initiative where they had a management team looking at, the driver was environmental benefits. They wanted to be environmentally cautious, and as they looked at it, they said, boy, this is a sound investment from an economic standpoint as well. And I think that this quote from our workshop that we held in Northwest Ohio really kind of summarizes that, where it's a financial investment that they're encouraging you to make because it makes good financial sense, and the fact that it's also environmentally friendly is makes it that much more of a good project and a good investment. And so that provides kind of an overview of distributed energy generation and how it can support business retention. And with that, I'll pass it off to Nancy Bowen.
Hi all. We're going to look closer now on how BR&E ties into renewable on-site development and the role extension plays. BR&E, as we know, is a widely used economic development program, and programs do differ quite a bit, but a key component is identifying opportunities for growth, and one being reducing or trying to control costs, including energy costs. BR&E programs ferret out opportunities for business growth and job creation. So when it comes to on-site energy development, companies have a to-do list that opens the door for BR&E practitioners to assist in helping those companies, and also it helps programs be even more relevant. Everything from helping the company determine feasibility to identifying experienced contractors that can help, to assisting with zoning or permitting clearances, are ways that the practitioner can help. In addition, they can educate the community by working with the media to put out a press release or put on an open house to let the community know what it's all about. Now, making the connection, as Eric said, between BR&E and on-site energy installations was really as a result of conversations with a renewable energy developer, the one that was mentioned in the earlier slide, who had had a track record of working with companies and took note that when they make a significant investment in on-site systems, similar to in buildings, equipment, workforce, land, things like that, they're really demonstrating a long-term commitment to stay and grow at their present location. So with that reality in mind, we decided to be proactive about how do we get the word out to businesses about this opportunity. And that's what got us kind of headed in this direction to host a pilot program, which we'll be describing in the next several slides. So here's a slide that shows a picture of the workshop that OSU Extension hosted in Findlay, Ohio last year in March. And we hosted it for a 22-county region. There were 50 participants, including about 30 company representatives. It was sponsored by Jobs Ohio, which is a state-run economic development organization. We really think that extension educators can play a role by hosting similar workshops that convene interested companies with energy industry key players. It really does demonstrate how on-site distributed energy systems work in terms of incentives, benefits, pitfalls, and it's really a great way to inform companies. We worked with the economic developers in the 22-county region and with Jobs Ohio to determine the invitation list, but the counties actually did the inviting. We developed an agenda around a 2-hour program. It was heavy on case studies and expert panel presentations by utility, regulatory, and contractor representatives. But it started with a meet and greet and welcoming remarks from the Jobs Ohio representative and by the president of the community college where we hosted the event. We thought it'd be important to include plenty of time for Q&A, and there was lots of discussion. We put the workshop on and are planning additional workshops, by the way. And we've learned, of course, some things along the way, including that we feel there's 3 critical components to developing or putting on a successful workshop. Really, the first one being the slide here lists the type of things that really need to be covered. The first component being providing the information about energy trends, policies, programs that can help really inform businesses about project development. This area was covered during a formal presentation, and panel participants also answered questions about tax or production credits and funding opportunities. We addressed questions about regulation, permitting, and capacity requirements. Really what this did is it covered the bases to lay the groundwork for the rest of the workshop. And we also provided handouts. I mentioned we had case studies, and these were 2 examples of case studies that we had really to communicate specific benefits and challenges. For instance, the case study of Cooper Farms wind project demonstrated why a turbine supply agreement is necessary in controlling cost, timing, and delivery of turbine components, and to make sure there's project flow and that access issues are addressed. Projects also need an interconnect agreement with the utility, and they explained about this and the fact that the utility would also be agreeing to purchase the excess electricity produced through the net metering program. In addition, there was a solar project example, and I see here on the slide that the graphic went away, but it provided insight into how the company measured the potential return on investment based on solar yields during different times of the year, which vary quite a bit. These case studies, again, were really very helpful to the companies in attendance, and they mentioned that was a key portion of the workshop. And then component 2 is really figuring out who should be at the workshop, who is your target market. Even though on-site projects are getting smaller and more diversified, and can work for a broad array of businesses. Really who benefits is who you really need to target, and on-site systems do make a bigger difference for the bottom line of medium to large energy users like food processors, heavy manufacturing, or distribution facilities. So targeting these businesses in addition to others maybe who have expressed an interest, especially through the local economic developers, is a really good way to narrow the field. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Myra. She's going to get into component 3.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Nancy, to kind of recap, mentioned the first two components. The first one is to research your renewable energy policies for your state. The second one would be to identify your target market. And the third one would be to involve your critical partners to identify who are those people who can bring people to the table and who have the expertise that they can share with your audience. So it's very important to find a program sponsor then first who would have the clout. As Nancy said, we use Jobs Ohio, which is well known throughout the state. It's the state's economic development organization. So they are very connected with the business community, and we're able to both promote and attract participants to the workshop. The second one would be potential speakers, and you know, this is where Extension really does an excellent job at convening experts as well as providing expertise ourselves. But for DEG, you don't necessarily need to be an in-depth expert in the topic as long as you know who are the right people to bring to the table who can get the message across and help the businesses that are in the room. So we looked at people like consultants, other businesses who had a good experience with this, utilities, regulatory agencies, tax experts. Those were the types of people who could provide that needed information then for the audience. The economic development community is critically important to bring to the table too, because oftentimes they are the ones in the local communities and in the region who are going to be working directly with the businesses that you're trying to reach and trying to encourage to engage in distributed energy generation. So they have the contacts. So when they're brought to the table and they understand the process and they're educated, then they can help promote that also to your communities. And then the final partner is, and not necessarily final partner, you may find some others that are also critical, but we would suggest education and outreach partners. And that would include tech schools, community colleges, again, those kinds of organizations that have access to the types of businesses you're trying to reach. So just briefly, this picture is a folder that we handed out to the people at the workshop, and this will give you an idea of what some of the information was that was included in this brochure. Now, the idea behind this was we wanted to provide a broad range of materials that these businesses could take with them, kind of mull over, look at, you know, begin to understand, and then hopefully take the next steps toward DEG. As part of our agreement with our sponsor, with Jobs Ohio, we measured not only short-term impact from the workshop itself, but we're also going to follow up with participants in 2 years to gauge the types of change in behavior that are going to come out of this program. So we're doing a longer range of view, not just the immediate responses. But it is important to note that in terms of the immediate response, 91% of the participants who attended would recommend this workshop to other businesses. So we felt that was a pretty good response rate. Now, bottom line, so not every business is going to be well suited for an on-site DEG system. There may be many barriers, and they could include things like site size, return on investment, timeline expectations from the company itself, land use requirement, zoning constraints, complicated interconnections to local utilities, state policies, which may not be as favorable toward this type of approach. So those are just examples. So they can prevent a business from entertaining the thought of engaging in DEG. But for others, planning, building, and operating a system that can provide to them a new source of energy, and it's a green source of energy, and it can bring benefits, including improving their company's bottom line, which is a critical indicator for private enterprise. So depending upon the size and complexity of the project, a business can expect a financial return on their investment within 4 to 10 years, which is not a bad time frame. So what I'd like to share with you now are a few slides on resources to kind of get you going on this. The first #1 resource I have here is OSU Extension's overall energy website, and that's energizeohio.osu.edu, and that would provide you with a lot of information in terms of what we're doing with renewable energy, shale development, other kinds of issues. The second site is a national site, and it's called Desire. Some of you may be familiar with this. It's really a good source of information for people in states who are interested in pursuing either renewable energy or DEG. Now, the first website is their homepage, and you can link on that and even find information on their renewable portfolio standards for your state, to get an idea of what the policy environment is like. The second website is specifically on net metering, and you saw the map that Eric had earlier. Those kinds of pieces of information would be included for your particular state, so you can see how beneficial this would be for your businesses. Now, the third link I've got here is OSU Extension fact sheets, which are 3 fact sheets that have been produced on distributed energy generation, which will give you some good overall information. Then another resource is actually, and this is a 4-hour video, so it might be something you want to kind of scroll through, but this is actually a video of our complete workshop that we conducted. So what you'll be able to do is get an idea of how the panels were organized, who presented on the panels, the kind of information that was provided, and basically a flavor of the entire workshop and the flow of the workshop. So I would suggest that too, and again, it's easy enough to fast forward on that to get information that you'd like. Now, if you are interested in bringing this to your state, we would be willing to work with you. We could partner with you to deliver a program or provide consultation and assistance, actually go to your state and engage in a program, however you would like to do that. As with most extension programs, we would need to charge to recover some of our costs, and it would really depend on the level of assistance you would like from us. So if you are interested, please give us a call and we can talk, or actually give us an email and we can talk about this a little bit further. So I'd like to end with, before questions, a quote from our sponsor. This is the Director of Jobs Ohio Northwest Region. And he recognized the value of this program to Ohio businesses, basically saying that it provided critical information regarding cost saving and efficiency benefits of green energy, and highlighted its contribution to the retention and attraction of jobs in Ohio. So he basically promoted the idea of distributed energy generation as a BR&E strategy. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to any questions.
Well, thanks a lot to the group for a nice overview of the things you're doing there. It's a really innovative way to think about business retention and expansion. As working on the input cost side there, kind of bringing that that function into the firm. Are you aware of firms that have gone out and done this as a result of some of your efforts, or are they still kind of in the exploratory stage?
Well, this is Nancy. I know we had a few company reps that were at the workshop that expressed that they wanted to go forward. The planning phase of something like this can be a long-term thing. I'm not currently aware of one that's actually broke ground yet, and I'll ask Eric if he might know of one. And we are going to track that because it'd be important to know who actually did, you know, install a system as a result of our efforts.
Okay, good. Sherry had a question in the chat box. Does Ohio allow third-party ownership of renewable energy systems? That's actually a, you know, kind of an interesting thing. I was talking to the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association in DC about a week and a half ago, and that's actually something that they're recommending the folks that they look at, that, you know, you have these other companies that are just sort of specializing in installation and maintenance of these systems. So rather than the company having
Scott,
to learn
can you hear
about
me?
it, they, yes.
This is Eric. I, once again, seriously apologize for my technical issues. In relation to the third-party question, Ohio does allow third-party ownership, but one of the requirements for net metering through the Public Utilities Commission here in Ohio is that the system must be located on your premise. So what we've seen, an example would be Campbell's Soup. Entered into a renewable energy project agreement with a third party that actually owns the system. And so Campbell's Soup entered into a long-term 20 or 25-year lease agreement with the company that actually owned the solar panels. So Campbell's leased them the land to build a system, and then in turn had a long-term power purchase agreement where they purchased the energy at a fixed price for 20 years from the third-party owner. And then, of course, the third-party renewable energy system owner is benefiting from the investment tax credits and sale of the SRECs and stuff of that nature. I'm going to mute myself to try and limit the impact of my system on everyone else.
I have a question for the group. You know, maybe you could raise your hand or click something to let us know if you would be thinking about trying this program in your region. So there's a little person with a raised hand. Just let us know if you're thinking about maybe running a program like this in your region. Or you could do a chat box too. I guess that would be another option. Bruce says they have too much wind power already, so they've got it. And Sherry says they're already doing it in Wisconsin. So what about Kathy in North Dakota? Yeah. Kathy's typing. Okay, Carol Welty in Nebraska is maybe thinking about it. Well, I would encourage those of you who are interested in that to be in touch with our team here and see what you can do together. Okay, the wind power and the Eagles. Yep. I hear fewer of those discussions about solar than I do about wind. Well, if I'm not seeing any more questions, so I want to thank the team from Ohio for sharing this, and hopefully this will make some connections across the system. This is archived, so people may be plugging in a little bit later. I appreciate your time.